up. I was standing here a little early and was like, is anyone going to come? It's enablement. I don't know how this is going to actually drive with the whole marketing audience. So I'm excited to be here. So thanks for being here. Let me give you a little bit, let me see if I can make this work. Just a little bit of background on myself. So I've been in marketing, sales and enablement for a long time. I would say my first job, or my first communications job, was probably in 2001, actually, in a PR firm. So I spent 23 years doing marketing, communications, or enablement, and across all different functions within enablement. Within marketing, product marketing, comms, demand gen, field marketing, all sorts of that. And I actually started at Workfront in the product marketing team, and about a year into my time at Workfront, they asked me to kind of move over to sales, which was the craziest thing, and I moved over into like the dark side of the world. Moved over to sales, and I started the enablement team there. So I built the enablement team at Workfront and was there through the acquisition of Adobe, and then that was about 7 years. So when that actually happened, I was like, all right, it's time for me to move on. I went on to HashiCorp, where I also built the enablement team. I got there a year before it went public, and kind of worked to scale that team and process and the sales organization in order to get through the IPO. Spent 2 years after that, and then 3 months ago, I joined Gong. So I'm a huge Gong fan, have used Gong since I was at Workfront, and I had the opportunity to join Gong to be the VP of Go-to-Market Enablement. So I've been there for about 3 months. So pretty excited about that, and I want to start by first saying that enablement, because we're all going to talk about enablement here, it's my least favorite word in the dictionary. Like hands down, period. I hate the word. I've been an official enablement professional for 9 years, and I was doing enablement in marketing long before I was officially in enablement. But what I would love for people to do is to raise of hands, can someone tell me what the word enablement means?
In marketing or in general?
Just this word in general.
I think it's just enabling, giving someone the tools or enabling them to complete something. I guess I can't use enablement.
Yeah, it's enabling them to enable. Yeah, right. That's exactly why I love this word. Yep, go ahead.
Giving them the ability to do something.
Okay, great. That's pretty clear. Does anyone else have any other specifics? Anything specific on what it means? What's that?
Providing someone with the answers instead of giving them the opportunity to figure it out themselves.
Interesting. Providing someone with the answers instead of giving them the opportunity to figure it out themselves. Yeah, it's kind of at some level, sure. I felt too, you got to go figure it out a little bit before I give you all the answers. But yeah, you're right. One more. Anyone else?
Teaching someone how to self-serve.
There you go. That's part of it too. So, but you can see it's kind of ambiguous, right? And when I first moved over from marketing into the sales team, one of the biggest challenges that I had as an enablement professional was the back and forth and the tension that was happening between marketing and sales. And not just like sales, but marketing and the enablement. Like, what are you doing that I should be doing? I'm supposed to be doing that. I write this content. I do this. Right? So just lots of push and pull because it wasn't truly defined. So, but I looked it up in my favorite dictionary, which is ChatGPT, and I looked up and said, what is enablement? That's literally what I said. So this is also the problem. You pull it up and it gives you a 3-paragraph answer around what is enablement. And if you read through that, I tried to underline and bold the things that I thought were relevant, but it's still pretty ambiguous, right? You providing individuals and groups with the necessary tools, resources, knowledge, and support to achieve their goal or perform their tasks effectively. So that can kind of come down to anything, especially from my perspective when I look at enablement, and I look at enablement as it relates to enabling and helping and empowering all customer-facing teams to do their job effectively, right? And to wildly exceed their goals. And so from my personal experience, that goes from working with an SDR team all the way through to professional services. So all customer-facing teams. And that ensures that they're on the same message, that they have the skills based on their role to do the jobs that they need to do, that they have the processes, the technology, the tools in place to do that. So that's kind of where that sits. but it still is obviously pretty ambiguous. So when I think about it and I think what specifically is enablement, first and foremost, I think everyone in a B2B company does enablement, like period. And a lot of enablement professionals or team might hate that because they feel like you're actually treading on their ground. But I think everyone, especially if you're focused on revenue and ensuring that the business is actually generating revenue, everyone needs to be focused on it. I also believe that if you have a proper enablement team, they need to be the most collaborative team in the company. They need to be working with marketing. They need to be working with product. They need to be working with customer support, service, all of that. It needs to be the most collaborative team in a company. By raise of hands, is anyone working on an enablement team today? No. Okay, that's what I thought. Who works in a B2B marketing company? Marketing in a B2B company. Okay, keep your hand up if you work with an enablement team. Just a few. Did anyone know that there were enablement teams in companies? Yeah, okay, great. I think there are both formal and informal approaches to enablement, right? So when you have a formal team, and it doesn't sound like anyone here is on a formal enablement team, you have a formal enablement team, there's a lot of focus around specifically core competencies. What are those skills that these folks need in order to be able to do their job? So there's sales training, there's sales readiness. There's efforts around enabling product launches, product marketing, collaborating with product marketing a lot, making sure that people understand the messaging. A lot of enablement teams will do pitch recordings, elevator message certification, product certification, and the like. So there's also informal enablement, which comes down to reinforcing those things, like coaching from the sales leaders, reinforcement from marketing teams and marketing folks who are rolling out new products and helping them in terms of helping them, like by providing them with things like discovery questions or qualification or different things that they would need in order to effectively sell a product. And so from my perspective, it happens, like I said, from everywhere, and it happens in both formal and informal approaches. I also will say, and having spent a lot of time in marketing, especially early in my career, it was incredibly difficult to measure the value of marketing when I started. I remember when Marketo and Eloqua first came out, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this whole entire curtain was opened, and you could actually see who was opening your emails. It was the first time like marketers could actually really track that. Enablement has a lot of those same problems today that marketing used to have and could, I guess, in some elements still. But enablement's job is truly to influence behavior or to change behavior. And so sometimes that's really hard to actually document unless you can tie what enablement is doing to a specific business result, or the behavior that you're asking to change is going to impact or drive some sort of result. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but a lot of teams have a really hard time actually making the connection between a training or a piece of content to a specific program, to a specific business result. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how that can be done. And specifically 3 things. So I want to talk a little bit about the partnership between marketing and enablement, and talk about an enablement charter. It sounds like some of you have enablement teams within your organization, and I'm going to bet that a lot of them don't have a charter. Bringing the gap between enablement and reality. How we actually can look at doing things that are a little bit more focused on just in time versus kind of like a one and done. And I'll talk a little bit really specifically about product launches and messaging launches, specifically as it relates to how a marketing team can work with enablement to help drive that across the sales team. And then finally, how can you effectively measure the value of this? So according to Gartner, 43% of enablement teams within B2B companies have a charter, which means that more than half don't, right? And so more than half of them rely on what ChatGPT told you to say, hey, we need to provide the things that the sales team needs in order to effectively sell, which means that they're incredibly reactive. They're taking everything from a sales leader, like the latest fire. How many people have had a salesperson come and say, hey, I need this, hey, I need this, hey, I need this, as it relates to a message, a marketing, a campaign, whatever that is. Never happens, right? Ever. ever. That's what happens to enablement all the time, especially if they don't have a clear path to what they need or if they haven't aligned any of their programs up to what the business is expecting. So one of the things, and I know no one is on an enablement team in here, but this is something I would think about. I think a lot of times enablement teams or leaders get really overwhelmed by the concept of a charter. Like, what does it have to have? Why do I need to have it? So I kind of boiled down 6 different components of what a charter would include. And it's something to think about if you're working with these teams, you have leaders, or a lot of times, and I've seen a lot of this with enablement teams really kind of organically growing out of marketing teams because they're automatically helping those sales teams. So a few things to kind of set what I would kind of consider like clear swim lanes in terms of what marketing's doing, what sales is doing, what sales enablement, or what they're doing in order to be a lot more effective. The first is a mission statement. I will tell you that my background in marketing has helped me so much with mission statements, and I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but having a clear mission statement. So specifically, why am I here? An enablement function isn't, every company doesn't need a specific enablement function. Smaller companies, companies without a lot of sales reps or the like probably don't need a specific enablement function. Because again, if you're doing it right, everyone's really enabling those sellers. So specifically, why did we just create it? Why does it exist? What's the goal? So if you've got money that's funding this team, why is it here and what do we expect from them? And then the plan, obviously, how will we achieve this goal? A quick snapshot of the team. And so this includes an org chart. It can also include, which in headcount reporting, all of that, everything you'd think. I also think that it needs to include cross-functional teams that enablement works with. So a lot of that could include a product marketing team. It could include field marketing. It could include product, right? All of those different teams and how they actually work with them. Customer training. In my instance at Gong, I work a lot with customer training because we sell sales software. And, and if we're not understanding the product, then we're probably not able to sell it. So there's just different groups within the organization that actually are really important. So mapping that out and helping those other groups understand it. And then finally, OKR alignment or measurable business objectives or key quarterly goals that are happening within the department are incredibly helpful in aligning the business value. So being able to say, hey, these are the objectives and key results for the department this quarter. And taking that down and aligning the enablement and creating enablement OKRs and then taking that down to a program basis and identifying program ownership is one of the easiest ways to be able to actually track it and be able to measure the impact that enablement's having. I think that can be done. It's obviously most helpful if it's coming from an organization level at the top and actually comes all the way down, but I have been in organizations where it has not been that way and being able to actually just set something that's a quarterly basis. And I know that probably sounds really basic because as a marketer, you're planning quarterly marketing plans and you're putting that all in place. On the sales side, they're not that proactive, right? And so being able to look at that at a quarterly basis actually helps to stop the reaction and the reactivity that actually happens when they're just responding to everything that the sales leaders need. The other components, maybe, there we go. 3 other components. 1, a deep dive into target audiences. Who here has done persona marketing? It's really important, right? I think persona marketing is one of the most important foundations. You probably all agree, but if you don't know who you're marketing to, it does not matter what you say, it does not matter what activity you do, it does not matter anything. You could then get your list wrong and then you're in a whole other world, right? But like the whole persona marketing is really important. I don't think enablement teams think enough about this in terms of personas of those internal audiences. And something even to think about from a marketing perspective. What does a salesperson care about? How are they comped? What equals success to them? And there's more than just actually hitting their number. What equals success? What doesn't equal success? What keeps them up at night? Like, what is that? And then if you're in product marketing, understanding that actually helps. But so looking at personas. And I actually have done this a lot where it's a great intern program where bring interns in and they do a lot of work to create persona 1 pages, which is a lot like, and having that and really kind of getting in and understanding each of those different roles so that you can create effective programs to do that. Cross-functional partners, I kind of mentioned this before, but who are they? Using this to drive collaboration, getting buy-in from those cross-functional partners into the programs that you're running or programs that you want to run. And then finally, sales technology. So what's happening? What technology do we have? How can we help? How can we use technology to get ahead and actually, leverage and become more effective? This is the area that I, quite frankly, spend most of my time thinking about today. And it's bridging the gap between enablement and reality. So by show of hands, how many people have rolled out a messaging deck to a sales team or to an organization, and you spend like, I don't know, it's a month or two later, and you find out that the field's using the deck that was out there about 3 years ago? No one, right? Ever. I've never gotten a call where they're like, why is the sales team still using all of these old slides? And why are they doing this? And why are they? I've also never seen a team when you've gone through and you've done you've just rolled out this new product, and you've given them all of the information they need, whether it's on a competitor, whether it's on a qualification metric, whether it's whatever it is, and you listen to what they're pitching, or you realize they're not asking one single question to the prospect on the phone. Instead, they're just pitching that deck from 3 years ago that doesn't even matter anymore, right? This is kind of like the hell that I live in every day. And it's the quintessential challenge. How do you actually bridge the gap from enablement, whether that's a piece of content, a messaging deck, or training, to what they're actually doing every day? How do you get them to listen? So Gartner actually said within this that right now there's an over-reliance on training and communication. And specifically, enablement teams are spending way too much doing one-time training, and then the sellers walk away and they completely forget what you just told them. Or a product marketing team shows up for one of these enablement-hosted trainings. I've never had this experience ever, you can tell. And they do one session where we record, even if we record the pitch deck, we send it out, here you go, and then those sellers actually either, and I like that it says willfully disregards what they've learned or the time to act, instead of falling back on the behavior enablement that we're seeking to change. It would be so easy if everyone just did what you asked them to do, but we know that that doesn't happen. So one of the things that's really coming to the forefront right now, and I would love to say I have an answer for this, I don't. I'm exploring all sorts of different things right now. One of the things that's coming up is this concept of nudges. And Gartner actually said that of nudges, the likelihood of companies exceeding revenue growth targets is like 1.9x with companies who are doing nudges. And nudges can be a few different things. I've got them laid out there, but I actually think marketing becomes an important function in nudges in terms of like continuing to bring things forward versus thinking like one and done, right? So threading concept or threading messaging through different things and continually like repeating it. What is it, 8 times for a prospect to actually engage? It's the same thing for a seller, right? So it's thinking about external philosophy and principles and applying those to those internal audiences in order to help make that work. So a few things that I think are helpful in terms of bridging the gap. One is process integrated nudges. So, and this is crazy to me, and I think it's because I'm a little old school, but AI drafted emails, right, for sellers, canned templates for sellers that actually become part of an integrated sales process. So adding they're like cheat emails, right? Like you have to, but adding all of that to ensure that reps are sending follow-up emails. The fact that it's AI generated now blows my mind, but that's just me. But it's doing things like that. It's incorporating tools and things that the reps can use inside of a process to nudge them forward to do it. Making enablement as real as possible. Asking someone to record a pitch and submit is very different than asking someone to pick up the phone and talk to someone and get someone's attention or deliver a presentation. It's really different. And so trying to do things it might be really important to make sure that everyone can deliver a pitch or, the first call deck or whatever in a way that you want them to. But I think it's probably even more important that they can have that conversation. They can ask the right discovery questions. So scenario-based enablement, but also even identifying, using proof points, and having them submit that call that they just, like, there's so much technology out there right now, but leveraging and having them submit the calls or the conversations that they've had with their customers in order to really see it, and tracking those trends to be able to see, hey, are we actually saying the right thing? And then instead of like scolding them, which is what I see happen a lot, it's teaching them, right? It's coaching them. It's investing in them to make sure that they're doing it. The other big thing that I think has been a promise for a long time that's really hard to do, and it requires, in my experience, a lot of partnership between enablement and product marketing, but that's just-in-time enablement. And that's literally linking content to the right part of the stage of a sales process, for the right industry, for the right pain, for the right use case, for the right, there's all sorts of scenarios that you can actually connect here. But if you're actually able to help those sellers by providing content at the right time to them, so if they're prepping for a call to get on with a financial services company who's doing X, Y, and Z, and it pushes to them instead of them having to go find it, like that to me is like, it's kind of the undelivered promise around enablement platforms, but it's also, I think, one of the most critical and impactful things that we can do from a marketing side and from an enablement side to get them right to the rep. And then continual reinforcement. I kind of refer to this as threading. So nothing is one and done at all. Like if you're talking about a new product launch, there's all sorts of opportunity to put things in like discovery training or persona training or competitive intelligence. That all kind of comes into that. It's all threaded together. And so if you're doing multiple sessions, you have opportunities with the sales team, being able to bring those concepts back or bring that messaging back only helps to reinforce it even more. Measuring the impact. So this is kind of the heart of it, and I have a philosophy on measuring the impact that's kind of come from my experience of not being able to measure impact for a long time. And it's set up in three, I kind of think about it in three tiers. So the first is looking at this, and this is where I feel like enablement or training or whatever you want to call it stops. But it's looking at leading indicators that are behavior-based. So training. Everyone went to this training. They should know what to do, right? Forget the fact that we've all been remote for a long time. People sign out, like whatever, they didn't attend. But that's kind of there. Now, however, I actually will prefer to say it's a really important metric. And all of these are really important metrics because they're kind of leading. It's saying, are they actually doing the steps that we need them to do first in order to get to what I'll talk in a minute about, which are lagging indicators. So are they attending the training? Are they certifying on time? Right? That can't be the next thing. You still have to thread it. You still have to have reinforcement, but are they actually doing it? Are they adopting the playbook? Are they actually looking at this? Are they downloading it? Are they leveraging the concepts that we just put in this really like big sales persona playbook? Are they engaging with the content? So we talked a little about content at the right time, but are they actually going to HighSpot or whatever sales enablement platform you have and actually downloading the content? Are they using the content? Are they still back on that 3-year-old deck? Campaign activity, right? And that's especially good for like SDRs and different folks, but looking at this and saying, are they actually showing up? Are they doing the campaigns? Do we have the results? Are we looking, are they contacting the right people? And then sales competencies. Are we asking them from a mastery perspective to do the right things? These feed or drive what I consider lagging indicators. And the reasoning that I believe leading indicators are so important is that if we wait for the lagging indicators, which are what happens after that, it'll be too late, right? So from an onboarding perspective, if we wait for us to decide if the onboarding program was effective by the time they sell their first product or they meet their quota, we probably missed an opportunity to influence that by not looking at their activity, right? So they feed up into this second tier, which looks at those lagging indicators. New hire ramp. How long is it taking someone to achieve their full quota? How long is it taking someone to sell the first product? How long is it taking someone to get on the first call? But just like looking at those key milestones within a new hire's life cycle to understand what matters. Measuring pipeline, are we generating enough? Do we need to understand messaging better? Do we need better content as it relates to that? Are we closing enough revenue? So new revenue growth. This can come down to quota attainment, comes down to product-specific attainment, competitive win rates. This is a great one, and I think it's a really good, an easy metric. So especially if you've got a lot of competitors out there and you've got a goal to say, hey, we want a 45% win rate. It's an easy thing to really look at and say, okay, that's our target. Let's talk about how we can actually effectively enable our reps to beat these competitors. Customer retention, right? And then forecast accuracy. There are so many more, right? The thing that matters at this lagging indicator level, in my opinion, is that it's what the business cares about. It's not what enablement's making up, right? And being aligned to the business metric is key. Being able to report on that business metric is key. And then finally, it actually all kind of culminates in this level of to rep productivity. And the ultimate goal is, are reps making their number? The business is completely built on the foundation of reps, reps are gonna make their number. At some of the companies I've had, it's been like 60% of our reps achieve 80% of quota or more, 70 and 70. But all of this stuff actually just like leads directly up to helping reps achieve their number. And so that's something that I have found in terms of tying enablement programs to value, but also keeping enablement and marketing teams that are working on these programs focused on what matters and focused on measuring the impact. So I have a case study of something we did. This was actually at Workfront, and we were launching a new product, and the sales cycle at Workfront was, especially on the enterprise side, was about 9 to 12 months. And we needed to get this new product. It was a product add-on to another platform out, and we needed to actually drive a lot more revenue to the business quickly. It had been something that had been in development in a long time, but the business needed to drive more revenue using this new product. And so the product was going GA at the beginning of August. And so we kind of stepped back and we said, okay, how do we enable the field to sell this new product as quickly as possible? And the other challenge we had was the field wasn't used to selling multiple products. That's a huge thing to overcome, going from one single product to multi-products. And I think it's underestimated in terms of how difficult that actually is. New buyer persona, new challenges, in this instance, a new buying center. So there was a lot of enablement that had to be done to teach them just simply about what was happening and why this product was important. So we focused on activation in our plan. And to do this, we actually, and when I say we, so enablement led kind of how we were going to enable, but we had a cross-functional team that included product, it included product marketing, it included field marketing, it included digital marketing and demand gen. And we all partnered together to create a plan that was focused on how do we activate this, how do we get the sellers as comfortable as we can before we launch. And so we started training, and this is something that there's a point in my career I've been like, oh my gosh, you cannot train the team on a new product way before GA. You can't do that. Actually, this flipped my entire mind. We started training them on this way early in the summer, so May, June timeframe. And we partnered with field marketing to build campaigns that they could leverage. We trained them and kind of put it all into place. Started building all this, had weekly check-ins with them beginning 6 weeks before the product went GA. And ultimately, within this, we were able to sell the first product the same week it went GA. And it was looking at this we looked at this as a very integrated opportunity that we hadn't done before. We'd partnered together, and I mean, I came from we were a really close integrated team, but we never actually looked at this and said, hey, here's our goal. This is what we need to do, and how are we going to do it? And it was one of the most successful product launches that we saw at Workfront. It was, I think, absolutely a testament to the collaboration that we did, but also to the partnership and to the partnership that was there between enablement and the field marketing teams. So when you look at this specifically, and I kind of look and break down the measuring that impact, there were a few things that were leading indicators that helped us to understand, and we use these kind of in check-ins. When we first started training, understanding like, are they attending it? Did they go? Do we train it? It wasn't just to check the box, but it was knowledge checks and certification, but very early. Content engagement, which we included things like email templates. You know, we primed the pump with all of the automated emails, the demand gen that they would need, started the campaigns early and kind of just made sure all of that was coordinated and used those leading activity metrics to help. So we had those weekly check-ins. Are you doing this? How's it going? What's not? Made it a safe space so that people could come and say, hey, this is where we're struggling. This is where we're getting the wrong kind of feedback. This is what's not working. That led to new revenue growth, right? And so we were able to break that down. We looked at pipeline, we looked at revenue growth, but we were ultimately, our top goal there was revenue growth, which ultimately helped with rep productivity. And also gave us a really good success story in terms of how we launched that product. And clearly there was a product marketing fit for it as well. And I know I'm standing in a room with no enablement folks and marketing and the like, but there's an important thing about enablement, even if you can't define it, even if it takes 3 paragraphs from ChatGPT, it's really important to drive business results. I think it's really important in having a unified goal, working together and identifying things that are going to help move that sales team forward is incredibly important to impact what you know, revenue or whatever key metric you're trying to impact. It's important to measure what matters and to have the right perspective in terms of the goal that's there. Partnership is absolutely key. I have seen or had the experience of inheriting a team that was incredibly siloed and did not work outside of enablement. And once we started to kind of open and kind of tear down those walls, it became so much more collaborative and so much more effective. And then helping everyone to realize everyone does it. You might not know what the word means. It might be the worst word in the dictionary. But it's not only does everyone do it, it's everyone's responsibility to help those sales teams in order to generate the revenue. And I think I'm going to end a few minutes early, but any questions? Yeah, great. Yes. Go ahead.
You referenced HighSpot specifically.
Yeah.
Are there any other tools you find to be as good or better?
Is anyone from HighSpot in here? I hate HighSpot. I'm just going to say it. I've inherited it. There's a lot of other tools out there. I actually think there's a lot of tools that are coming up that are actually AI, like built on AI and a lot more friendly, especially I think built for this generation of sellers. There's one that I'm really intrigued by right now. I'm not using it, but so I'll just, not an endorsement, but it's a company called FlockJ. I think it's awesome.
Did you say Flock or Block?
Flock, F-L-O-C-K-J, J-A-Y.
What makes it better?
It's a collaborative tool. I feel like the HighSpot, sorry, and yeah, this is being recorded. They're all going to come back. HighSpot and Seismic and those tools to me, I feel like are really almost like dinosaurs in this. Like FlockJ is a tool that's actually, it's bringing training, peer examples and sharing opportunities, really lightweight sort of CMS sort of thing. It's pushing content. It's literally doing the just-in-time enablement there, and it's actually, you're able to like, within a LMS sort of course, you're able to build in things like add this proof point, do this, do that, or add this example from your peer. And it's just a really collaborative tool that I think is built for this next generation of sellers. Yeah. Yeah.
I find it fascinating because I didn't know what an enablement team was, which is why I came here. And I've been in marketing a long time. I'm like, what is this? But as you're talking, I'm realizing a lot of the companies I work for have enablement teams. They just don't know they do. And
Yep.
so I'm just
Yep.
because, I work within other companies, and so I'm just wondering. I'm just thinking, man, if they could get this dialed in.
Yeah.
It would make a huge, talk about impact, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
But what are on your enablement team, like who are the key players like in an
Yeah.
enablement team versus yourselves, the marketing? Like I
what does the head count look like of my teams? Yeah, so I'm going to say, I will say this, and this doesn't help the enablement industry at all. I don't think enablement's cookie cutter. I don't think you can just go in and say, hey, this team looks like this. Of the 3 teams I've had, they've all looked different. My current team, I've got 4 different teams. The first is actually what I would call a field readiness team, or like a core enablement team. And it's got a sales enablement team, it's got a post-sales enablement team, and it has, when I say team, I'm like 2 to 3 people. And then I have someone who's 100% dedicated to onboarding, right? So new hire, they're coming in, making that experience as amazing as possible. So I have that team. I have a strategic programs team, and that team really works with product marketing. They do persona enablement, competitive enablement, and then there's a dedicated product enablement person on that team. And then I have EMEA, I have international, which tends to do all of that across a really thin sort of perspective. And then I did this in my last company I have now, and it's probably because of my marketing comms experience. I have an internal comms team. And so they do all of the go-to-market, all hands, messaging and platform for like key initiative launches. And that could be anything from like org changes, because we know that never happens in a sales team, comp, rollouts, things like that. And it helps to kind of streamline all of that together. Yeah, so my team focuses on all customer-facing teams within the org. You'll find that a lot of companies will have just a dedicated sales enablement team. I even have support enablement right now, which is kind of abnormal, but you'll find within support teams that they'll always have support, like they'll have trainers, because it's such a repeatable thing, and there are skills like, hey, how do you de-escalate a really upset customer, right? So there are some specific skills there, but yeah, it varies by company. Yeah.
We definitely need a marketer, project manager. I don't want to say titles, because I know you're saying it's kind of vast and can't be put in a cookie cutter, but
yeah, I haven't seen
more roles that it would be on an enablement team that's actually kind of a bridge between the sales team and the marketing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of program managers, a lot of project managers. I haven't seen marketing especially embedded in enablement, but I've seen enablement embedded in marketing. Right, so that, like, a lot of times it will organically grow in marketing, and that's where it will live. A lot of times it'll be built over, they'll have a sales trainer, and they'll just start to build more into it. So it really does vary, and I think some of it also varies on the skill or the CRO or whoever's there in terms of how they drive it. Yeah?
So this is a question that might not jive with your past experience, but
Great.
in my past, I've had a good, like, sales has always come to marketing for enablement.
Yeah.
It's always happened.
Sure.
In my current role, which is a company that has really not had a marketing presence before,
Mm-hmm.
the salespeople do not want to use like decks.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want to use, leave behinds. They don't want to use templates, etc. I'm curious if you've gone through that journey before, and how do you get them into a place of, like, to me, this is about us being professionalized and
Yeah.
taking it up a level, but I'm curious.
I think the first thing I would do would be to understand how it's going for them, right? So are they good? Are they able, like, if someone showed up and they were able to confidently sell to me without using a deck, great. I'm going to guess you have major issues with consistency. You probably don't even know how they're actually talking to anyone. That's going to require a behavior change, and it's also going to require them to see success, right? So the first thing is basically kind of putting something together, testing it, making sure it's good. Because the other thing with a sales team is if you put something out there and it fails, they're not coming back to it, right, ever. Like, they're like, no, that did not work, and my income, that's the other thing, my income relies on me being successful. So if that didn't work, I'm not going to be your test guy. So you have to put something together that you can trust. You can test it, have some sellers who you get convinced to actually go out and test it, and then highlight them once it works. Get them to talk about how great it is. You got to find some people who are, like, especially because that's a really big change. So that's how I would approach it. There's also technology. I mean, I'm going to guess you don't have conversational intelligence or anything like that to understand what they're doing.
I love going, but it's really expensive.
It is, I know. I've bought it twice, I know. Yeah, because so it's a black hole. So you don't have, so that's how I would.
I mean, we have conversion rates, and
They know it sucks.
they're not good.
Okay, so what I would, I'm sorry, I'm just a really transparent, like I'm just straight. That's how I would approach it then. I would actually find a few people who are willing to go test it and get some good examples and say, hey, this really worked, or, whatever. Like, especially if you don't know where it's at, you got to build that credibility with them to understand it's going to work. Yeah. I think, yeah.
Yeah, so with a laser focus on impact, like revenue, retention, how do you receive it? In my experience, there's a disconnect oftentimes between what salespeople, sellers, or CSMs feel they need, say they need, identify as their needs to have better customer conversations, customer deals, and maybe what the data says that they need. What are your best signals as you're kind of looking at like the journey map of the sales cycle and the retention cycle to identify like what are the gaps to prioritize?
Well, so the first thing is that if you're lucky, let me say that, and I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of really great RevOps teams too, so that helps. If you're lucky, you have data at your fingertips. And one of the ways that one thing I've done successfully is looked at stage by stage conversion to understand what's happening at each stage. We actually used that at Workfront and found that our stage 1 and stage 2 were so long that we needed to like really zero in on business value and helping them to identify what the pain was and what business value was in order to help it. We saw an improvement there. But you've got to look at the data, and then it comes to leadership a lot there, right? So like if leaders are looking at that data and understanding it, you got to find it. And then again, it's finding what works. So if the entire sales force, the entire CSM team is pushing against something, then maybe there's something to it. If it's the loudest people, they're typically not the people you really want to be talking to. The people that I find are the stars are those that are out there doing the work. They're down, and those are the folks that I think you can use to actually generate like the best in class and tell them and show them why it works. I think the biggest thing is actually the show versus the tell. And until a lot of sellers' minds are until they see that it works, they're not going to try it. So I think that's there's not a silver bullet. I think so. Yeah.
So you talk about how it's so crucial you find champions within the sales team. Test things. How do you find your champions?
First, I think champions have to have a lot of influence. I mean, does anyone know Medicare? I mean, it's kind of the same thing. They have to have a lot of influence, right? A champion isn't going to be someone who might be the loudest person in the room and no one listens to. That's not who you care about. You want to find someone who has a lot of influence, who's doing well, right? It can be someone who's been there for a long time, and probably needs to be. It can't be like the newest guy on the block because they've got to have that credibility, and then they've got to be willing to try new things. Right? If they're the best out there and they're doing it the same way, I'm going to bet that doesn't last forever. Right? So they've got to be willing to do new things. They've got to have that influence, and they've got to, and I think that's really where it comes down to.
Statistically, any one pitch is not going to close one. I mean, like,
nope.
So even a great content's more likely than not going to work. So, but at what point do we concede? Okay, it's not working.
Again, it's looking at that feedback. I mean, are your overall conversion rates going down because of this new content? Then that's a big problem, right? I think there's a level of testing it up front, finding those people, using it. If I go back to my kind of measurement, the lagging indicator, right? So that you have the ability to change it and to have, so is it working? This is a test. Oh, like feedback from the prospects, feedback from whoever. Is this does this resonate? So that you can modify change before it gets a big rollout, that's really important. Like beta to GA, that's really important. I don't think that you can just get it out to everyone and then look behind and say, hey, did that work? Otherwise, you're 2-3 months down the road and you've got a problem. There's a lot of things, especially if you're an enterprise sales process. It's not just one pitch that's going to close the deal, to your point. But there's all sorts of things that come with that, and that first call could be one of the most important to keep it going. So understanding that impact too.
All right, let's give a round of applause.
Thanks. Thank you. Oh.